Good morning, Siddharth. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey,
And
hey,
hi
morning.
everyone, this is Siddharth, and Siddharth's had a wild journey through. He went from being a very business mind to architecting AI platforms at scale. And along the way, he's also an interesting fusion of product engineering and database. It's hard to find that combination. And I'm glad we connected, Siddharth, and thanks again for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Prithvi.
Yes. So let's start with the origin story.
Sure.
You said growing up, you went from selling oil door to door, and right now you architect AI at scale, right? What's the common thread that connects then to now?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny when you look back on all those years. I was 14, 15 when I was doing that. Pretty much my first job or first thing which I tried out. So the tools have obviously changed, right? But the principles haven't. What selling the door to door, cooking oil taught me as a kid was about lessons about perseverance, about resilience, about the art of walking the talk. The fact that it's not about oil, it could be any product, but it is about the story, making that connection with your customer, the story about convenience, trust, and value. And I was just really selling the peace of mind in that particular context. And now, years later, as I talk to different enterprises, different companies about AI or data platforms or agentic frameworks, cloud and edge computing a few years back, it's the same muscle. It's evolved into something a little bit more sophisticated. It's still about helping people see the outcome. It's not the technology. We were doing edge computing and 5G and cloud computing just a few years ago. And it's not about selling the AI now. It is about helping businesses make the business faster, more efficient, and helping them scale to the next level. Really, the same sort of rubric. Make sure that you're delivering on the outcomes that you're promising.
So it sounds like you understand the primitive of selling is communicating value.
Absolutely. It certainly is. It's part, humans are wired to react to stories. We are all wired psychologically to react to stories. So it's about painting that art of possible, selling the story and having the story tied to something which really reacts with you, whether you're an enterprise or you're someone who's buying a subscription from some kid. What's in for me? What is the outcome that I can expect to get? And that's
Right.
really been the common thread in
Right.
both those.
Sweet. So you've worked across the corporate world, right? You've worked at startups, you
Yes.
worked at Oracle. You, I'll get back to Oracle, but I'm a big fan of Oracle, right? You worked at Oracle and now you're at Synaptyx, right? And each is very different in its own way, right? One is you're building a solution and
Yeah.
you're in front of the customer at a startup. And then at Oracle, you build technology solutions. And
Right.
then with Synaptyx, you, I'm assuming, there's a service angle to what you do, which was probably not there. So, what are three different fundamentals that you've learned from being in these different ecosystems?
Yeah. Great question. There are different ways that you can think about those chapters in my life. One is how do you scale from 0 to 1? Something that I've seen both at large corporations like Oracle and, of course, at Synaptyx. But the few things which have been very fundamental to that, one is the belief in that sort of idea and the people around it. How do you innovate in an environment where you're overcoming harsh constraints with limited resources? Now, in an enterprise context, you may think your resources are unlimited, but they're not. The environment may be very conducive and growth oriented, but it may be harsh because you're competing against upstarts and already existing players in the market, startups. And from a startup perspective, when you think about it, you are fighting the reverse battle, but that particular aspect about having that belief stays the same. Actually, I would take this back even further, right? Back when I was selling that whole oil to my neighbors, it was not about, I think it was probably the first subscription service. If I knew back then the subscription thing was going to be
Right.
this bad, I would have stuck with it. But it was never about that money. It was, I made them believe that I'm making a promise and I was able to deliver on it. And now as I moved to Oracle, the belief our early adopters had that yes, we would be able to deliver on a large, scalable, flexible, secure platform for their marketing teams.
Mhm.
But turning that vision into reality taught me about execution is where the belief meets discipline, right? So that's extremely important.
Right.
But now at Synaptyx, it's more about bridging that value gap. It's more about how do we help the organizations really realize the value of AI in a measurable outcome based scenario.
Mhm.
But again, it is about being perseverance, having that grit, and have that obsession with the outcome, all of it tied with sort of beliefs. So that's I think been the sort of common thread between all of these different parts.
And what would be something different that was on a very primitive level that blew your mind when
Yeah,
you saw it?
yeah. I think that's something you need to be curious about. You have to have just a perspective of why. What is it making it tick? So I'm actually uh, curious about this. From your point of view, how do you view curiosity? Is it how do you think about questioning what's around you, and how does that work for you?
No one's ever asked me a question on the podcast. You're the first. And I'm glad you were the first one. But curiosity is unintentional. If true curiosity
Yes.
is very primal, right? I would say it is intelligence, right? But then there's also another kind of curiosity which has more to do with seeking, right?
Mm.
That is more intentional. How do I look at it? I look at it as it's our innate ability to be able to observe what is around us, and to the extent that our senses allow us, make sense of it.
Yeah.
So that's I would say that is what true curiosity is. But then there's also the paths of learning or upskilling, and then purpose. Then it becomes more layered. And then it becomes, depends on the individual. Some people want to explore certain paths. Some people do not want to explore certain. I don't know
Totally.
if I answered your
Totally.
question, but that's kind of
No,
what.
you, no, you, no, great answer. See, that's the part I wanted to explore a little bit, because you asked about what is that primal value which drives us as humans and has been driving me. It has been curiosity. It's been about asking those questions, right? Very early on, my granddad handed me a encyclopedia, and for the younger listeners, it's an actual book in physical life. It's not a tab on a browser. But that initiated that infinite loop of questioning, like you said,
Right.
questioning, seeking the answer, going back, seeking again. But what that did was it sparked a need for knowing what if, right? What if we did it this way? What if we were able to provide a solution in a different manner? Or what if I could think about a problem in a whole different manner? I view curiosity also as mechanism to make a connection, right?
Hmm.
It is about connecting with people. You and I, we talked about curiosity. I learned something new about how you think about curiosity and how I think about it. But it is also that driver that takes us to digging into how a particular person solved a problem for a particular product. So it's a connection with the product. So you are actually connecting with the person who designed that product. You
Hmm.
are connecting with that problem. And now through Oracle, through Synaptyx, I've been always been curious to connect with the problem itself, understand the user. Why are they having that problem? Put yourself in their shoes. And that really helps product leaders, us as product leaders, as builders, make better decisions when we put the user centric approach. But at the end of the day, the primal thing which drives me is that ability to connection and get that connection and ask that question.
And by the way, it makes sense, right? Because it sounds like you're saying, hey, I care about the problem.
Exactly. At the end of the day, world around us, there is so much to discover. I still think I'm in that encyclopedia. I'm living that inside that encyclopedia now, and there's so much more to learn for us. But yeah, loving that problem is a very important aspect.
Yeah, because the reason I said that is curiosity comes comes from a Latin predecessor, which
Hmm.
was preceded by care.
Yes.
And the reason I'm bringing this
Yeah.
up is the way whatever I said about curiosity, a lot of stuff I've observed in the animal world. I much prefer looking at, hey, what do dogs do
Yeah.
growing up? What do, wolves or young baby tigers or bees or ants or anything like that? And everything's very obvious there.
Right.
So, so that's why I said it's very primal. It's very natural for us to care about ourselves
Absolutely.
and our surroundings. And
Absolutely.
which brings me to my next question is that you're like a hardcore product person. Like it's coded in your DNA because everything you say.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back and I'm sure when we're gonna rewatch this, you could lose count of how many times you say the customer or the client or the user,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And a good product manager. A lot of people don't understand this. They think it's about shipping products, but a good product manager says a lot of no's, and it's not easy. I'm
Oh
sure you
yeah.
have. So, out of your startup life, and then one example from your Oracle life, and one example at Synaptyx, all very different times and different environments. What's a no that took a lot of work to put across the table? Not, because it's not easy
Yeah.
sometimes to say no to an organization, to your team who is under you, or your bosses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
love to know that. Yes.
Yeah. No, totally. I think very early on when I started viewing product as a career option and I was learning the nuances of what it takes to work in this discipline. Someone, and I've always learned by talking, doing more. Someone had told me that, hey, you have to be very courageous to be a good product manager. And it didn't really make any sense to me. What has courage got to do with the product role? Exactly, right? I have to ship product and I have to do all of
Yeah.
the
Care
specifications and
about
all
the
that.
customer, figure out what they need, and ship it. Right.
Exactly. So, what do you mean by courage? It was the courage was interestingly. I mean, as I went into the whole product space, started building out what we are trying to do. It is absolutely the one of the most important traits a PM has to develop. Right? Any new PMs out there, courage is a very important trait. Now, it means saying no, absolutely, but it's you should not be saying no just because of bias, because of it's making you feel uncomfortable. You have to, as a product person or a builder, I would say, you have to have an informed, data-driven value proposition to say, hey, this is why this particular feature does not belong in the product because it is going to lead to X, Y, or Z, whatever it is. Now, the other aspect of it is you want to use that as a mechanism to make sure that the product or the feature that you're shipping doesn't become a collection of everybody's opinions. That happens quite a lot
Yeah.
in large organizations, especially. So at Oracle, when I was rebuilding our data as a product for enabling agentic and AI workflows on the CDP, everybody had an opinion from the solution consultants to the salespeople to the executives, because everybody obviously understands data and their schemas. Everybody had an opinion. There were a lot of pulls and pressures on the future version of what that schema should look like. And my entire thing was to make sure that I listen to everybody, respect everybody's opinion, but I wanted to make sure that I do not say yes to just to please everyone. Otherwise, it would have led to chaos. I actively said no to almost 90% of those asks stating that this is not right for the product today. It was obviously not a popular opinion, as you can imagine, but it did not align to the long term viability of the piece that we were building. We wanted to be flexible, forward looking, yet backward compatible. So it did help shape the platform to what it is today, right? It is moving, it's scaling faster, it is moving in the right direction. And those no's were really an investment in a lot of terms, right? At Synaptyx, saying no for us is about saying no, you should not use AI everywhere. And for the enterprises who are dealing with a lot of this FOMO and a lot of this whole thing that, oh, I have to put in AI because I have to, hearing that is a very jarring experience. But again, the approach we use is that, look, you need to look at your outcome. Think about what you want to do. Think about and we can go about it later. But no really is buying clarity, focus, and then establishing trust. And that's really what helps us make that service, makes that product and our interaction with our user better. So as a product manager, learn to say no correctly, but you have to keep that as a very important part of your tool set.
And so, how do you show this in a way that, or try to teach it to people younger than you or people who work with you,
Yeah.
beside you, to say it in a healthy, data backed way? Or it's less about telling them that, hey, this is the best way to do it, versus making them see it when it's happening and then realize it themselves.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's hard, right? It's not something like I had my own experience, right? I learned by saying yes and seeing the implication of it. Saying no, the first no was very hard to a very senior executive who had a very strong opinion because it was very hard, but it taught me very important lessons about managing expectations, making sure at the end of the day, you are the CEO of the product, right? That particular product. You may be a person who's shipping a feature, but as long as you're in love with the problem and the outcome with the customer in front of you, you will find that your reasons will come organically. You will be able to find that data because you have obsessed about that problem. You have obsessed about what is the outcome you're trying to deliver to the client or the customer. And that will naturally tell you that, hey, saying no is the right thing right now. And we'll have to manage how we deliver on that particular promise.
Makes sense. Cool. So there's this, you work a lot around AI, right? And there's this big ethics around AI. Now, when I think about ethics, I think, to me, I think there's two components to it, right? There's like a morals side of it, and then there's a trust side of it.
Yeah.
And again, to me, morals are very subjective, whereas trust is very objective. Deliver what
Yeah.
you say you're going to deliver. So, first of all, like, what's your view on the whole ethics debate? And to what extent, if you think we need guardrails, what kind of guardrails do we need? And do both morals and trust have a place in that? What kind of ratio?
Yeah. Great question. Now, I believe it's very important for us to have an ethical framework, regardless of the technology, that should drive our industry forward. And I say this because everybody's view of what is ethical or what is right can vary, right? Depending on their own frameworks, then etc. So you have to be respectful of that view. That said, there are certain principles that as a collective, we have to make sure we apply for. For example, do no harm is something which a lot of science fiction writers used to write about the robotics laws. But really, if you think about how AI can be or is being used for harming, and whether it is fake videos or content or whatever it is, that has much deeper implications for us as a society as a whole. So while true, we cannot control it, right? We have to have some guardrails which say beyond a certain amount of tolerance of getting past those guardrails to guarantee free speech, we should not let it go completely wild, right? At the end of the day, free speech, as humans, we all cherish that in liberty, but that also has limits, right? So use the same thought process to think about AI because it can do a lot and
Right.
we don't know how it will evolve. So that's how I think about it.
Cool. That sounded like Stan Lee's line in Spider-Man. He says, "With
Yeah.
great power comes great
Great power
responsibility."
comes great responsibility.
Are you
Totally,
a
totally.
Marvel fan or a DC fan?
Oh, out and out Marvel fan. Out and out Marvel fan. It's my
Okay.
favorite thing to do during holidays.
Yeah. Same, but I've been disappointed with their movies over the last 5, 6 years.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
since the last Avengers movie, when Tony Stark dies,
yeah.
I don't know, it's retired from cricket or something.
I know. Yeah, the moment Disney took over, it just became a
Right,
thing.
right,
Yeah. But,
right. So
so
Siddharth,
it goes.
you do a lot of stuff that normal people don't. You're going back to curiosity. You at Oracle, you built AI when no one else was doing it. Very few people were doing it. And did it make it to production or you had it production
Did.
ready? It did, right?
Yeah, it
Then
did. We did a controlled availability thing, but it
right,
was production ready and between production ready and being released.
right.
Yes.
So that's a direction, and you've had a longish career, right? A couple of decades, and you're still curious now. You said you go to tech meetups, and you said you put together
Yeah.
a non-invasive firearm detector, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So what growing up curiosity, what keeps you going now?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of it is stems from that. At the end of the day, when I look around, I always think that everybody can see problems around themselves, right? But for me, the way I look at it at times is how can I make it better? What is it that I can do as a part-time engineer, part-time builder, part-time dad, part-time citizen to make things better around us? Now, from a personal perspective, I feel extremely strongly about gun safety in schools. Of course, it's a big topic, but beyond that, what can we do? So I think I look at problems. Not all problems we can solve, so you need to be aware of that.
Yeah, you're
But
not
when I
from
see
rubber
something,
guys, I'm assuming.
yeah, exactly. So you should not try and solve for everything. But the ones where I see, and I'll take that example of the sort of device that I was building to use as the stud finder technology to find a gun and concealed gun in a non-intrusive way. It just the problem led me to really think deeply about what we can do to solve it. Now, I think there's an important aspect I want to highlight here. Today, from a curiosity perspective, and all of us having instant gratification now, even more so with ChatGPT and so on, a lot of these things have become surface level. Everything becomes, hey, sure, what is the way I can detect a gun or whatever? What is the best way I can implement an agent? Very, very surface answer we can get quickly. But I think we need to take a step back, zoom out, and think deeply about that problem. When you think deeply about that problem and look at it from all various angles, you will find that you will be looking at that challenge in a whole different light. So be open, be curious, and take a step away, think deeply about the things you really genuinely care about, whether it's business or in life. So I think that's
Right.
what drives me.
And then, so how do you pick these areas of interest?
Oh, that's actually easier because as like I mentioned, not every problem is worth solving. Some of them you just need to step away, be patient, be observant, and let those problems sort
They make
themselves with
themselves.
time. You cannot. But the problems which I prioritize or I tend to go after, it's about meaning, right? So in context of business, it's easy that you can have a dollar value assigned to a particular problem and say determine in a classic 2 by 2 matrix whether it's high complexity, low value, and high value, low complexity. Those are kind of problems you would tend to work at first.
Mhm.
But in life in general, it's about purpose. Can I make things around me a little safer, a little better? And the human interaction with that technology, can we make that experience easier, make it less frictionless, right? So as long as you have a meaning, a purpose, so that directly is tied to the worth of the problem
Right.
solution. I look for that, and that helps me determine that should we really look to solve it or not.
Makes sense. The whole time you were saying that, part of the time I was visualizing a product matrix. Okay, so these
Yes.
are his weights. That's how you
Yes.
visually describe it. It
Exactly.
feels really good to meet someone who has product in their DNA. What I mean by that is not a long career. It's like you've always had that mindset since you were a boy, and
Right.
it's rare to come across those people.
Yeah.
And but it's also easy to tell when you meet them. Uh,
I know.
So you mentioned that your journey itself across the oceans and across multiple roles and multiple contexts, right? Owning P&L at the startup, being responsible also for selling there
Yeah.
versus building stuff in Oracle. You used the word playground earlier, right?
Mm.
So can we go into that? What is that is the surface? Oh, this is my playground. What's underneath
Yeah.
it and why that word?
Yeah. I like using that analogy because I think I mean it quite literally, right? So visualize a playground, right?
Hmm.
Typical playground would have some slides, some things to kids to clamber up, made up games, a bunch of kids enjoying themselves, having fun. And yet they come back to the same playground day after day, find joy, happiness, meaning in an unstructured context,
Hmm.
using the same set of the structures around them. And they find joy in that, right? Now they collaborate, they find out something new. And I'm sure you remember the playground games we used to make up when we were all kids.
Right.
And that's exactly, I've been lucky enough to have a career which has felt like that, where I've looked at it as a playground, look at a way to experiment, to collaborate, to have fun. But the playground thing works because it also has certain boundaries, right?
Hmm.
That slide has a certain structure. If you go down that particular slide, you will come out this way versus that way. And then
Right.
that itself has a boundary, safe boundary,
Right.
etc. And which is where that whole aspect of discipline with creativity meets. And you need to have a lot of discipline to be able to deliver on the value that you're promising, right? Otherwise, it's all chaos. Think about school recess back in the day. It was chaotic. It was just
Chaos.
chaotic.
Yes.
What I've seen and I've learned is the best builders, the best teams are curious, learn how to play together,
Hmm.
have fun while doing it. And that's where breakthroughs happen. That's where really your imagination starts working and you can build something really spectacular out of that. And most importantly, have fun while doing it.
Yes.
Because if you're not, you don't want to be the kid just guarding that play set saying it's mine. You want to be able to go out, have fun with different kids or different people in that
Yep.
playground.
Yep. And you also want to transfer good energy versus suppressing the
Absolutely.
energy, I guess.
Absolutely. Make
Right.
friends, make connections, explore, imagine, and have a laugh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk AI really quick, right? So you're
Mm.
at the front lines doing a lot of work in AI. Where do you think there's a lot of noise around AI agents and agentic AI in terms of agents, right? Where is enterprise now, both from technology capability point in terms of solving their needs and in terms of deploying it, versus where do you think they are going to be in the next two, I don't know, after 3 years from now?
So I think there are three questions there. So let me break it down. First things first. Yes, absolutely. There's no question. There's too much noise, right? And if you zoom out, you will see that noise is being made by the companies who are creating those models. Of course, have to create the noise.
Yes.
The infrastructure companies who's driving benefit out of that whole LLM aspect, content creators, because it's getting in the loop of getting attention, and now the application companies who have to get into it. So it creates a lot of FOMO, right? It creates a lot of FOMO in mind of an enterprise. If you are an enterprise leader, you would think, what am I not doing that I'm missing on this amazing thing which will
Right.
increase my efficiency by 75%? So first things first, you need to take a step back and understand why the noise is coming from. So when you do that, at the end of the day, now I'll go to the second part of the question about enterprises. At the end of the day, what enterprises crave is scale faster, do their work more efficiently, be more profitable, and have smarter outcomes than the competition. That has not changed. It's not going to change regardless of the tooling and technology around us. Now, in my view, the entirety of the enterprise readiness today and where they want to go in the next 2 to 3 years, there's a massive gap there, right? There is a massive value gap, which is what we are trying to address at Synaptyx as well. First of all, the enterprise need to understand that AI is not a magic bullet. It's not a silver bullet that will cure everything in their businesses. And largely, the businesses have inefficiencies in terms of how people to people talk to each other or not. Do they all use the same? Do they have the same view of the data that they have?
Right.
Are there various teams, depending on the size of the organization, are they all pulling in the same direction? It is about culture, it is about people, and which is really where the human aspect of enablement comes into play, along with the data that enterprise have. We tend to look at the company as a whole. We tend to look at the enterprise as a whole and try to figure out what is your data, what is your real value proposition that you have, because tooling will change around us. It has always, it will,
Yes.
like we talked about, but your core data, your core IP is not going to change. So that's the real mode. And that's how I see enterprises eventually moving to operationalize that part first and then build on top of what tooling gives them that maximum result, right? You should not have AI agents as a bolt-on just because it's a new shiny object. You need to think about really from a values lens, where will it add, or where will it move the needle the most? Which is again, at Synaptyx, we encourage our customers to think about the value proposition, look at, it doesn't make sense to put an agent to answer vanilla questions. It makes sense for an agent to understand the context, and that's very hard to do. Last part of your question about next 2 to 3 years, this entire piece, while it evolves, the fundamental part of it will be around how they're architected. What is the costing looking like? So what is the value looking like? So I think people will move away from, I have to put an agent because everybody is, to saying, is this really the value this particular piece of technology will give me? And it justifies the cost to investing in, of course. Based on that, it'll evolve from there.
And then now to continue, close out that loop from an outcome perspective, where do you think it will move the needle the most in 2 to 3 years at enterprise? Business unit standpoint, it could be, I don't want to define your answer, but what I'm looking at, do you think it's going to be in ops? Is it going to be move the needle a lot in the selling function, marketing, CX, or
Yeah,
where?
sure. So I think I would think about it slightly differently. I would think about it from an AI and agentic perspective. You need to understand where does it actually work best. So the places where it's working best, today and likely to be moving same thing is two or three places. Number one, generation of text. So generation of text could be in context of contracts, could be in context of CX, could be in context of any industry that you pick. So that's one area. The other part of it is pattern recognition at scale and understanding the context behind that pattern recognition and joining disassociated pieces of information to that particular piece. Today it's vector DB, RAG, graph RAG, or whatever. Tomorrow it might be something else. It doesn't matter. And the last bit is being able to remember what they did to hand off the context to the next agent in the orchestration flow so that they can take an action. So I think if you look at those three aspects and then look at any use case, whether it is CX or finance or any of those industries, you will be able to draw out a lot of use cases where the needle will move the fastest. But specifically to your question, I think the areas where there's repetitive pattern matching tasks, example, data ops, absolutely yes. I do not believe that code generation will be continuous thing. It will be an assistant. The whole code generation thing, it will take its own life. It's not the real value proposition. Real value proposition will be taking the repetitive tasks, reduce the amount of time we spend in plumbing, and then take our jobs or work to a higher plane in terms of how do we actually apply that creatively.
Makes sense. Cool. So you have a special initiative, if I may call it that, right?
Yes.
You love mentoring young people who are ready to go to college or who are ready to step
Yeah.
out of college. And you've been doing that ad hoc, but you have thoughts around putting a structure to it, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So when did you start on it, and what about it is very special to you? What is the most fulfilling side of it for you?
Yeah, sure. I've been lucky to have a few mentors in my life. And it started, I was not actively looking to mentor people. It started organically. Someone reached out and we started having a conversation. Another person reached out and so on and so forth. I had quite a few people reach out to me and I felt bad not being able to give them time in the day-to-day work. The common thing between all of those folks were they were looking not for just guidance or just more information or rhetoric. They wanted some actionable thing that they could do to move forward. And it's a combination of things, but what really is driving me there is I think today in our day and age, given the ambiguity we all have, not just in terms of the technology, AI is all encompassing, but everything else around us is raising the anxiety levels. And there's a lot of mental stress across the board. So in this situation, if you are able to give someone just a gentle nudge or a gentle hand on the shoulder, say, it's okay, let me take you to that playground and then give them that framework. They can then explore that themselves and have a good experience while playing in that playground is
Right.
what's really driving me there.
Yeah, that is. You said it in a really nice way when you said, "Hey, I want to
Thank you.
take people to that playground, that
Yeah.
magic playground, and then show it to them." That's really nice.
Yeah.
So, I I think you said you have been trying to make it a little more structured and expand your efforts in that space. So, how would AI be a part of that?
Yeah.
Do you envision?
Absolutely. Like we talked about, right? I see AI as an enabler, right? So my vision is to build up a agent and an orchestration of agents, which would do matching of the mentor and mentee based on traits, right? Not every single every individual is different, right? Someone needs more of guidance, someone more needs more actionable. I want to use the AI to remove the note taking, the drudgery of trying to figure out, hey, I need to connect you with this individual who may be able to give you that. Or why don't you think about this topic to be more curious and learn more or build something? I wanted to use AI to make those connections and really have the person to person connection focused on understanding each other and let the AI be a constant companion to the mentee as and when they need it. but have the human really drive that experience with that mentee. So AI as an enabler, automate the note taking, automate the connections, automate the actions which they might be able to take, because you want to nudge your mentees, right? At the end of the day, I truly believe it's about action. It's not about
Right.
more information. We have too much information. It's about action, and AI can help us automate taking that action, etc. So that's really where I see that platform generating, and hopefully very soon I'll be able to share it with you and the rest of the world.
Yep, I'm excited. I actually spoke to someone recently at Microsoft, and they said they
Mm.
use AI at their offsites. So for a couple of days, there's a bunch of people in the room, everything's being transcribed, and then they play around with it to try and generate outcomes from, and they say they've gotten better. It was a lot of fun, and they got a lot of actionable stuff as well. It
Yeah,
kind of ties into what you're saying. It's like, hey, let's leave the stuff that is the burden out, and then let's focus on playing.
because I think now more than ever, people need to have the courage to explore, right?
Right,
Now more than ever, people should remove any barriers that we've built up over the years that
right.
I'm a product person, so I can build. I'm not a product person. I can only be solutions, or I can only be engineering. I think those barriers are going to go away. And which is the reason why now ever more you need to have that connection with people who've been in the industry and who are willing to contribute to this. Through this, I would request anyone and everyone, whoever listens to this, if they are interested in being mentored or being mentoring, please certainly reach out, and I'll be happy to onboard you guys.
And we'll shout this message out too. That's
Yeah,
great.
thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, Siddharth. This was great. Thank you so much again for your time.